Hello, today we're in the informative and literary and analytical writing packet. We're going to look at essential question number 5. What kind of voice would be most effective in this form of writing? And this is learning target. We've had it last 9 weeks. We're having it this 9 weeks. There's a ton of notes under here. There are very important notes because this is learning target under style number 2, to use domain and genre specific vocabulary to create a voice of authority, that voice of the expert. So in the last 9 weeks, that's the terms in green. We were doing literary analysis. We talked about to be an expert and using those words of an expert, we call upon and use in our writing those words from that lit learning target packet, the language of literature. So we have some words up here that are only text specific to when we're analyzing the language of literature. So it's time we start thinking about what is the language of informative analysis, the language of nonfiction, and use the terms that an expert analyzer would use in the language of nonfiction. So let's look at what those terms are. So first thing I have listed here is informative analysis terms of an expert, most of which, if not all, are from that informative learning target packet. But here's some words you can call upon and use. Keep in mind, most of the time we are using the prompt and the skills elements in the prompt to determine what we have to talk about as our voice of the expert. But sometimes we might talk about how other areas of the expert terminology play into what the prompt is wanting us to address. So therefore, make sure as you use terms from any, either if it's a literary analysis, as you use terms from up there, or as you use terms from down here, we're calling upon our terms that are only for that specific genre. So we are making sure and are addressing the prompt properly. If the prompt, if we're not addressing the prompt and we're using all these fancy terms, we're not writing a solid essay. So make sure that you keep that in mind. Okay, so here's some terms. They're not limited to what's on the sheet, just a few. So we can talk about facts, the central idea. We don't say theme for informative analysis. We say central idea. We could talk about the claims. We could talk about the general. We could use the term generalization. If we see a stereotype or a general statement, you can use the word generalization, or the author makes many claims throughout his piece. We can use the word objective. We could also use the word people. If we're noticing something about the people in the text, we use the word people. We don't say character in informative analysis. We say people, because these are not characters. They are living and breathing people, because they really are existence, because it's informative non-fictional writing. We say events instead of plot or conflict. We say events. We talk about point of view still. So some of these terms do cross over, and point of view is definitely one of them. You can talk about the author's purpose of writing the text. You could talk about the author's position or the person's position within the text. We can use that term relevant. We can use that word sufficient. When we're looking at the facts that the author has put within their piece, we may be able to determine whether we feel that they're relevant or sufficient. We may be asked to do that in a prompt. So you want to be able to know and understand and use those terms when it addresses the prompt or the task that we are addressing. Text structure, compare, contrast, cause, effect, and chronological order, all terms that might play into a prompt that you are having to address in an informative analysis. Text features. Text features, text structure are similar, but the features would be like those headings and charts, boldface prints, italicized prints, underlined sections. All of those things are text features that you can discuss, point out, and talk about within your writing of an analytical, informative piece. You can look at the ideas present within the piece. You could use and look at the word choice and mention word choice as something that you are analyzing within a piece. You may be asked to. You can look at description and detail within a non-fictional piece as well. You can also look at figurative language, but you need to make sure those figurative language elements, such as, personification, similes, metaphors, imagery, all of those, yes, you can still discuss them, but it should be only when they are present in the text and when it's addressing a task from a prompt. Tone is huge in informative writing. Not mood, but tone. So not how the piece makes you feel, but the sound of the author, that non-fictional writer coming off the page. Tone is something that you can discuss within a piece. You can also talk about the technical language used. So as we're creating our voice of an expert, you could talk about the technical language that non-fictional author uses as a voice of an expert as well. You could talk about the punctuation used for effect. You can talk about the word choice used for an effect. You can even still talk about the connotation, in other words, the feeling that words give you throughout a text of informative non-fictional analysis. So again, you're not limited to these terms, but know that the word choice used down here is distinctly different than the word choice used up here for literary analysis. So some of them do carry over, but there is some that are distinctly different. So we need to make sure, like the central idea, we don't say theme in informative analysis, we say central idea. We need to make sure we're not calling people in informative analysis texts characters, because they are not characters, they are people. So we're not talking about conflict and plot, we are talking about events found within it, because these are actual events that have taken place. So keep in mind, know the text that you're analyzing. Is the text literary? Is the text informative? Because there's a different way of creating that expert voice in a text that's literary versus creating that expert voice in a text that's informative. And you need to use the proper terms so that you sound educated and so that you're addressing the prompt properly. Otherwise, you are writing for nothing and you're wasting your time. So please go ahead and do the type 1 for this learning target, and make sure you're using words and vocab in this unit, which is the informative analysis unit, that are strictly words that would be seen by or written by an expert for informative analysis. Go ahead and get working your type 1.